So for Marzano's chapter 2, um, it's all about assessments and using assessments. And assessments are feedback for students, but it's also feedback for teachers. So I can judge how well I taught my lesson by the feedback that I get on my student assessments. Or again, the exit tickets, or that's another form of feedback from your students. But this is seriously just literally about teacher assessments. There's a transparent relationship between students and scores on an assessment and their progress on their proficiency scale. So element 4 is informal assessments of the whole class. That's your barometer, so to speak, on how the whole class is performing. And it doesn't typically involve recorded scores. It can be something as simple as a Kahoot, thumbs up, thumbs down, your exit ticket, just any, a message on Google Classroom. Any little thing can tell you where your students are. Element 5 is using the formal assessment, and that's individual students. So that provides accurate information regarding a status at a particular point in time. So right now in special ed, I've recently just done a San Diego reading assessment to assess my students' fluency level, their instructional level, and their frustration level. And I'll continue to do these every 4 weeks to see if their fluency, instructional, and frustration levels have changed. So if I'm providing instruction properly, then those should be going up. There may get to a point where we plateau, but they should be going up. And that's a specific topic that I may be checking for literacy. It can be done with, reading comprehension, math, science, what have you. Common assessments using the proficiency scales are selected. You can use selected response, short constructed response, go to bed, go to bed. Demonstrations, interviews. You can have, if it's oral communications and you're having students do a demonstration speech, well, that's one of your standards you're hitting. Did they nail the rubric of the speech? FFA, AGRI, if they're performing a welding skill, did they perform that skill properly? There's so many different things where a student can demonstrate. You can interview a student to see, these are, I feel like an interview form where we're providing feedback on what we've read. So, you can watch these videos, and that's somewhat of an assessment. You can observe a student. You can do student-generated assessments, or you can do response patterns. And again, it can be anything from a Google form to Kahoot to, there's so many different assessments that you can actually use. Proficiency scales need to be developed by your teachers. That is a very important PLC part that you need to be working with your teachers. You need to, if you're a group of science teachers and you all teach 9th grade science, then you need to be working on that proficiency scale for that particular group of students. Maybe bring in your 10th grade science teachers and say, hey, what do we need to get them ready for the next level, and go from there. There's whole class and there's individual assessments. So depending on what you're doing, those proficiency scales are probably going to be developed and geared more towards your whole class, whereas in special ed, everything is geared toward the individual student. It's a shift from the assessment perspective to the measurement perspective, and I find this really, really important because students are assessed to death, but are they just getting good at being assessed? What are we actually measuring? What are we doing? Again, I go back to Patrick Lenciani's book, 3 Signs of a Miserable Job. What you're doing has to be measurable. I have to see what it's taking for me to get a buy-in. And again, I've mentioned that in the past with students. You have to have a measurement so they can see where they're moving toward so they can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so that they just don't feel assessed to death. And, you know, just those assessments can take many different forms. That's one of the most important things I think about is, you know, in art, excuse me. So if I was assessing a student in art, I would look at the perspective, their use of color. There would be so many different things that I would look at, but I wouldn't expect every single drawing to be the exact same. And again, that would be a student demonstrating a skill. So if you think of agri-mechanics or things like that, students can demonstrate those skills. They can walk you through the steps. This is the first thing they do. If you're talking shop procedures, lockout, tag out, this is the first thing I do. This is the second thing that I do. So they can demonstrate their steps and walk you through it. And then, you know, there's the good old pencil and paper assessments. Thank you.